Hey, beloved ones. Today I wanted to talk about songwriting a little bit more. If you missed my last video, go back and watch it because I talked a little bit more about the process. And I feel like I hope it's really encouraging to you as a songwriter to know that it's not easy to do this. That a lot of times, especially in the past, I've expected that I would just sit down and magically write a song, but there's a lot of just really cultivating a lifestyle of songwriting. And so that's really what that video is about, is these practices that are going to help you to write songs. So go back and check that out. And this one will be more about the nuts and bolts of what is a song and what are the rules, because it's important to only break those rules on purpose and not because you just don't know, because a song can seem either sloppy or brilliant depending on the knowledge of those rules. So I wanted to start out by talking about the basic parts of a song and what those parts serve. Before I go any further, though, I wanted to express my gratitude to Art House North and Sarah Groves and the songwriting workshop I've gotten to be a part of the past couple of years. There is a great songwriting community on Facebook, Art House North songwriter group you can check out and become a part of and join those discussions, and also join the Art House Dallas songwriter feedback groups that happen every other month. So those are some things that have really helped me. So a song is basically verses and chorus, and often a bridge, and sometimes pre-choruses. And so it really depends on the song, but those are the basic elements, and most people are going to be familiar with those elements. So when you're not using the basic format, you want to be really sure that you are consistent with it. For example, a song can be like a hymn, where it's just stanza with the same structure, stanza with the same structure, and no chorus or refrain. But there needs to be at least a theme developed, or a repeated line, or just an idea that ties it all together. And so that's something I'm not going to talk about too much, because I feel like the elements of that and the ways to write that well will be kind of incorporated into these other things. But that is a structure that exists, and some songs will start with the chorus occasionally. So those are a couple things I just want to mention off the bat, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about the basic structure of a song that most people are familiar with. And so the first verse is usually either one or two stanzas, and that first line is really important. Just like the first line of anything that you write, you want to hook the person that is your listener. You want to get them interested. And so the first line needs to be something unique, needs to be something that maybe they haven't heard said before, or something that a quote or something they're familiar with, but then developed by the second line in a different way. And so it's really important to make sure that you are saying something unique, that you're not just saying things that have already been said and saying them the same way. And so it's really a part of the process that sometimes that first line for me is what gets me to write the song. It's what comes to me first. But sometimes the chorus comes to me first, and I have to fight a little bit more to get it right. And so I want you to know that revisions are part of the process. Getting people's input is part of the process. And so be aware that that first line is really important, but also that doesn't preclude writing a song. You can always come back to it if you're just not feeling like it's coming to you yet. So with that, it's important to have a rhyming structure established. And so the most basic rhyming structure for that line and the lines that come after it is AABB or ABAB. That means the first two lines will rhyme, and then the second two lines will rhyme, or the first line will rhyme with a third line, and the second line will rhyme with a fourth line. And so that's your most basic 4-line verse, where the way that those things rhyme. But as you know rhyming patterns, you can start to get creative. You can actually do 6 lines and have the first 2 lines rhyme, and then the next line doesn't rhyme with those at all. And then the next stanza of that verse, those 2 lines rhyme, the last line rhymes with the third line. And so you can do some really creative things with rhyming structures if you know how to do it, if you know how to play with the structure people are used to and kind of grab their attention by doing something a little different. So a word about rhymes as well, that a lot of times people think they have to just kind of get it out of their head and that they have to know how to rhyme really well. And it's work. I've actually heard interviews with Lin-Manuel Miranda talking about Encanto and how he was always mumbling in the corner trying to rhyme things. So it's definitely a process of play, of trying new things and trying to figure out what rhymes. And if you get stuck, there are tons of rhyming dictionaries out there. So you can check out, just Google rhyming dictionary and use those to find rhymes if you can't find one. And the thing about rhymes is that they don't have to be perfect. Like most of the basic rhymes you would think of are ones that actually have the vowel and the consonant matching together, like hand and stand. But you could also do hand and can. And so you can kind of match some of the consonants or even just the vowels, and it'll still have that kind of cohesiveness that you're looking for. And if it says the thing you want it to say, it's more important that it actually communicates something meaningful than that it rhymes perfectly. And so I just want to say that a lot of times people will rhyme just to rhyme, and it's just nonsense. It doesn't mean anything because it's just a rhyme. So be sure that not only are you rhyming in some way or tying these lines together, but it actually means something. It's actually a good statement. And so I think that that's something important to think about as a songwriter is, do your lines mean something? Are they said the way that it would be spoken? The other thing is that sometimes people get really poetic and it just sounds really jarring and really strange the way that they write lines. And so be sure that your lines are accessible, that the vocabulary you're using is not too archaic, or only do that sometimes, because you don't want to lose your listener because the language is too awkward. So with that, after the verses, I know it took a while to talk about verses because I was talking about rhymes too. The rhymes apply to the chorus as well. And so if your idea is a little more complex and you need something to kind of move from your verses to your chorus, you can have a pre-chorus of just a line or two, but you don't want to have a super long pre-chorus. And honestly, I'm pretty guilty of using excessive amounts of pre-choruses. And so something I'm learning is, how do I develop the verses in a way that lead into the chorus, but I don't overdo it. I let the listener fill in the gaps a little bit. And that's actually something I've heard about Pixar, is that Pixar lets its viewers fill in some gaps in information. They don't spoon feed you everything. And so that's important to remember, is that give your listeners some credit as well. Don't think that you have to spoon feed them, and don't be super afraid they're not going to get it. Just give them enough that there's the dots they can fill in, and it's a little bit of a little bit of work that really engages their mind in the song, but it's not so much work that you lose them. So that's a delicate balance that you have to figure out as you write. And honestly, feedback is a big part of figuring out when that's working and when it's not. So your chorus is your main idea of your song. So you want to lead your verses back into the chorus. And with each successive verse, you want the chorus to mean something slightly different. So Andy Gullahorn is like the king of this. So if you want to go check out a songwriter whose choruses are developed every time he adds a verse, check out his work because it's brilliant. Another thing I've learned from hearing songwriter workshops by him is that the structure of the song is really important to be followed, because that's what your listeners are going to expect. So if you break the rules in some way, you need to have a good reason for it that's really going to get their attention. And so he's also really good at that. He knows exactly what the rules are, and he knows exactly what he's doing when he's breaking them. And so that's the thing too. We should never break a rule of songwriting just because we're being lazy. And so that's something to remember as you're writing, that this is the structure that is expected: verse, chorus, and then often a bridge. And so a bridge is just a couple lines, and it's kind of further developing the idea of your song and bringing it back to the chorus to kind of add one more little thing that develops it a little bit further. So that's your basic structure. You obviously have instrumentation and interludes if you want to add those. And the other thing is that each of these pieces of your song need to be distinct melodically. So if your verses are lower, you want your chorus to be higher, and vice versa. If your verses are faster in terms of speed, with lyrics per second, you have a slower chorus to let people kind of catch up. And so you want some distinctiveness among the parts of your song to show that your song is in a new movement of the song. And the other thing is that you want your song to keep moving. You want it to keep going from one idea to another and developing those ideas, so that by the end of the song, you're in a different place than you were at the beginning. And I love the fact that that's what the Psalms are, and that's why the Psalms are such an inspiration to me, is that the psalmist starts out super honest, super raw, and then he beholds God and realizes this is who God is, and then that informs the rest of the psalm. And so you see this progression happening of thought throughout the psalm. So I feel like that's a pattern for us, of the fact that even for me as I write a song, often some things in my heart are changing as I write it, so that I'm a different person at the end of the song. And so that's really what you want for your listeners, is that they're in a different place. They've gained something by the end. And so that's kind of the basic structure of a song. And so now we can talk a little bit more about some of the devices to make the song better. So one of the big ones, because God made us with imaginations, is imagery. If you want a great example of someone who does imagery really well, check out Nicole Nordeman's writing. The song I Am talks about pencil marks on a wall. And it just has all these images of childhood and different seasons in life. And she just captures these snapshots, and it's wonderful. And so if you look at her writing, you see throughout each song, there are mental pictures that really engage your imagination. And so, as much as possible, try to include some imagery in your song. Try to paint pictures with your words and not just make statements, but evoke images. And so, that's one thing that a lot of people don't necessarily think about very much, but just begin to notice that as you listen to a song. Where are they painting pictures? And it's, if you have a storytelling ability as well, it's really cool when you can tell a story in a song, because that engages a part of our souls that our souls think in stories. And so just like Jesus speaking parables, telling stories to get people involved, I feel like we can tell stories with our songs. And Andrew Peterson is like so good at this. I love that he takes the stories of scripture and he writes songs about them. So that's another thing that you can do, and something that I would like to develop honestly in my own songwriting. So another thing to consider is metaphor. And so that's when there's something in your life that you notice that you're just like, I feel like this has layers of meaning, and it could be for something deeper. And to pay attention to those moments. And one of the people who does this really well is David Wilcox. If you look at the song, That's What the Lonely Is For, he's talking about this idea that he visited this huge mansion, but it was actually inhabited just by one person. And it was kind of sad because it was all of this space and it wasn't filled. And he felt like that was a picture of the heart, and the fact that the heart isn't just this big empty house. It's actually made for fullness. And so I love his willingness to just pay attention to these metaphoric moments of life and to write songs about them. So I wrote a song called There's a Crown, if you want to check that out, that kind of deals with the metaphor as well. So that's another thing that you can do in your songs. And there's actually things you can do with words themselves. I talked about rhymes, but you can also pay attention to the sounds of the words themselves. You can do internal rhyme, where you rhyme something in the middle of the line with the end of the line. You can also do things with alliteration, where you take the same sound at the beginning of a word and you kind of have a few words, like walking on water has those W's, or assonance has the same consonants, like pray for rain, where that A is there. So you can actually do some things with the words themselves, where you start to make interesting sounds that kind of catch your reader because they have that similarity, almost like painting with the same color in different areas. So there are a lot of different ways to do this. And I'm sure I missed some. I have this feeling I'm forgetting something too. So I'll probably come back and talk about it later. But here's the basic structure. Here's some tools that you can use. And I hope that's helpful to you as you write, to be able to use these different parts of the song and to create. So know the rules and pay attention to the structure that you're using. The other thing I think I was forgetting before is pay attention to syllables, because it's important to have a structure where your listener can kind of engage with it. So once you create a structure for verse 1, make sure verse 2 matches that structure, that you have the same number of syllables, that you're following the same rhyme pattern, and try to be considerate of the fact that this person is trying to kind of jive with you and follow you. So if you are not intentional about being consistent, it's not going to be as easy to follow. And the other thing that makes a song easier to follow is in your chorus, actually repeating the title of your song twice. And so you don't always have to do that. If you're going to a song that's got multiple stanzas in it, you could repeat the title of the song in each stanza. There are different ways to do that. And some songs don't even have the title in them. But in terms of making it easier for your readers to know this is what the song's about and this is how to find the song, it helps to repeat your chorus. So I feel like that's enough for today. I'm so grateful that you're on this journey and that you're watching these videos. Hope this has been helpful to you. So thanks again. And if you have any questions, please ask. And if you know of anyone else who would be blessed by this and encouraged by this, please share it. And I've actually talked about these things with my husband's students before. So also share this with kids. Let them know if they have questions about songwriting. Because I share these things because I think that a lot more people could write songs if they just had the tools. And songwriting is a great way to just really talk about the movements of your heart and to be able to connect with other people and share and help them feel less alone too. So I hope that did this for you today. Much love to you all. Bye.